Today, in Dismissive Avoidant Alone in Love, we're going to open the tightly sealed doors of that mind, of that heart, and take a slow, observant walk through the quiet corridors of solitude, where love stands at the threshold, knocking, but rarely welcomed in. Now, you've likely met someone like this, or perhaps, more intimately, you are someone like this. Polished, capable, witty, maybe even a bit charming in your own distant way. You keep your house in order, your life tidy, your emotions filed away in a drawer labeled, "Not now." People describe you as calm under pressure, a fortress of logic. You might even pride yourself on being unflappable. But when love comes close, real love, the kind that asks you to feel rather than fix, something within you begins to retreat. Ah, yes, the grand disappearing act. Now let me tell you a little story. There once was a boy who built a fortress, not with bricks or stone, but with silence, with independence. He was praised for being so mature, they said. He never cries, never asks for anything, so strong. But strength, you see, is often mistaken for survival. And that boy, he learned that to need nothing was the safest way to have everything he wanted withheld. And so, he stopped needing. Or rather, he pretended he did. That boy grew up, of course. He dated. He may have even married. But every time someone tried to inch their way into that fortress, the drawbridge was raised. Not in anger, but in instinct. Self-preservation disguised as self-sufficiency. This is the essence of the dismissive avoidant, alone in love. Not loveless, not heartless, but alone, paradoxically aching for connection while simultaneously fearing it will devour them whole. You see, avoidants, dismissive ones, aren't strangers to love. On the contrary, they long for it, they just don't trust it. They were trained early on, whether by coldness, inconsistency, or overbearing rigidity, that emotional closeness leads to disappointment, that vulnerability invites harm, and that autonomy is their only sanctuary. A woman once said to me in therapy, "I know I love him, I just don't know how to need him." And there it was, the entire paradox, pinned like a moth in a display case. This style, it is not dramatic like anxious attachment. It doesn't shout or plead. It withdraws, quietly, elegantly. It explains rather than feels. It intellectualizes grief, romanticizes solitude, and, my favorite, justifies emotional starvation with phrases like, "I just need space," or "I don't want to be codependent." But let's call it what it often is. Fear. A deeply embedded fear that closeness is suffocation, that letting someone in means handing over the controls to a ship they built alone, weathered alone, captained through storms that no one else stayed to witness. Now, if you love someone like this, if your partner is avoidant, here's what it feels like. You're in the room together, but somehow, you're the only one in it. You reach for them, not physically, but emotionally, and your hand passes through them like smoke. You ask them how they feel, and they tell you what they think. You ask for presence, and they offer you productivity. You ask for vulnerability, and they blink at you as though you've spoken in a foreign tongue. It's not that they don't feel. Oh no, they feel deeply. But they've learned to translate those feelings into thoughts, then into actions, never into expressions. They'll build you a shelf, but not tell you they miss you. They'll plan your entire vacation to the finest detail, but won't admit they were hurt when you forgot their birthday. They'll show love in actions, but struggle to receive it. Or, worse, believe they are worthy of it. You might find them romanticizing old flames, the one that got away, not because that person was perfect, but because distance is safer than reality. Longing is easier than sustaining. Fantasy doesn't ask you to be vulnerable in real time. It's no wonder so many of them struggle in therapy. Ask them to recall their childhood and they'll shrug. It was fine. Press for details and the stories vanish like vapor. They don't remember, not because nothing happened, but because they trained themselves not to feel it as it happened. And the body, oh, the brilliant body, it obeyed. It numbed. It muted. It filed away the need, until the file was so full it simply disappeared. And still, they are not lost causes. They are not broken. They are not incapable. They are simply tired from carrying the weight of self-reliance that was never meant to be shouldered alone. So what can be done? First, they must recognize the fortress is no longer necessary. That love, real love, will not annihilate them. That asking for help is not a crime against their sovereignty. That needing is not weakness. It's humanness. They must learn to identify what they feel, not just what they think about what they feel. A maddeningly subtle difference, but a life-changing one. They must lean into discomfort, sit in the squirming silence of emotional exposure and not run. Just stay. And if you love them, don't storm the fortress. Wait at the gate. Be consistent. Be gentle. Be curious without being invasive. They will come out when they realize it's safe, and when they know you won't flinch when they do. In time, the avoidant can heal. They can learn that independence and intimacy are not mutually exclusive. That autonomy doesn't mean exile. That their emotions are not liabilities, but signals, beacons, messages from the self to the self. It is a long road, but not an impossible one. I've always believed that we are hurt in relationship, and so too, we are healed in it. The dismissive avoidant, alone in love, must learn that love does not mean surrender of self, but the expansion of it. And that, my dear friend, is the difference between surviving love and truly living it.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.